What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Hoops podcast, and we're here for episode 30. I believe that's right. Y'all know how I get down, but I've been on the street recently, so hopefully that is the right number. But I'm joined today by two passionate Magic fans to talk Magic basketball. I want to introduce RK first. Feel free to introduce yourself to the people and things you got going on.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm Beyond the RK on Twitter. Love following the Magic, big Magic fan, but just like putting out work on the Magic and NBA and data science, analytics, all that different stuff through some different platforms like Substack and Swish Theory, B-Ball Index, and just kind of my own Twitter and YouTube and all that kind of stuff on Beyond the RK. And feel free to follow me there for my work. It's mostly a lot of data visualizations on basketball and hoops and T-Mac, one of my favorites, and the Magic, and just trying to scout other teams and put out work to help basketball teams look at their own scouting and different team building processes like that.
That's
How you doing?
On today's podcast, we got some breakdown hoop heads, true shooting, value over replacement, plus minus, raw matchup data. We're going to get all into the X's and O's of basketball today. So I'm happy to have RK on here. And I want to introduce Steve-O of the Close Up Magic podcast. How are you feeling, Steve-O?
What's going on, man? Doing well. Psyched to be here. Psyched to talk a little bit of Magic basketball. I just want to plug Beyond the RK. Really big fan of his work. And this is our first time chatting together. Also first time chatting with you on a pod, Gifted. So really looking forward to this conversation, y'all.
Hey, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time, both of you guys. Can't wait to talk some Magic hoops. Been following your work for a while as well.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to have both of you here on the podcast. Today's conversation should be very fun. If you're a listener, make sure to tap into the Gifted Hoops podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We've been super duper consistent, and I plan to keep this going for when the season starts. But now let's get all that out the way and let's talk about Magic basketball. So as you guys know, we're currently in a off season where there is no NBA basketball. There's FIBA. We might slightly reference that, but not too crazy. I want to focus on the Orlando Magic and their vision as a team. And I think the best place to start this would be the year before 2023. For me specifically, I want to open up this podcast by starting with the first move, which in my mind put Orlando on the map when they made the trade for Wendell Carter Jr. I'm gonna go with Steve-O first. What were your thoughts when they made that trade?
I like how you framed that up. The Wendell Carter Jr. trade. Most people reference it as the Vucevic trade, which, I get, because at the time, two-time All-Star. But for the Magic, we let go of Vooch, got back Wendell Carter, salary filler with Otto Porter Jr. and a couple first-round picks, which the Magic selected Franz Wagner and this past year, Jet Howard. That was like, for me, that was just like something that we almost wanted a couple of years earlier, but it was the true sign of, okay, we're done trying to maximize this past group. It's not working. There's some new contracts that are about to come up. We're not going to pay those new contracts. It's time for a new era. So, we shipped off one of the longest tenured Magic players of all time. He's leading scorer and he leads the team history in a bunch of different categories with, I'm not sure about scoring. Don't quote me on that. But, loads of different categories, beloved and also hated by many Magic fans. And we basically received some really foundational players and assets, which turned into foundational players. Wendell Carter Jr. kind of went from, in my opinion, someone who was injured all the time and a little bit of an unknown with some inconsistencies in his spot in California or Chicago to now one of the most underrated centers in the league, who really kind of can do a little bit of it all. He can play a little bit of power forward, a little bit of center, decent rim protector, smart passer, really smart offensive player. Rarely do you have a complaint with him other than he misses 15 to 20 games a year, and sometimes you want him to be a little bit more aggressive, but that really was, like you said, Gifted, that really was the sign of this new path for this team, and where they've since, you look at this team from the trade deadline 2.5 years ago to where we're at today, and it's 3.5 years ago. It's night and day. It's as a Magic fan, someone who's been covering the team, I have more excitement today than I did 4 seasons ago with that different generation of players, just because, in my opinion, the ceiling is so much higher. I don't know if you want more details about that trade, but I feel like you mentioned, that trade was just the symbol of this new path that we're going.
Yeah, no, I think that your initial reaction to the trade makes a whole lot of sense. And I purposely said the Wendell Carter trade because while Vucevic was the star player in that, I felt like Wendell, when given the opportunity for that Bulls team, showed a bunch of great flashes. And for you guys, I mean, I would argue Wendell right now carries more value than Vucevic, and now your core, it just makes a lot of sense moving forward. So to me, this was a win-win deal for the Magic. But I got to get your thoughts on it. RK, how did you feel when you realized that you were going to have Wendell Carter playing for your franchise?
Hey man, I mean, I was as hyped as anyone for that trade. I was super excited for the return. Like Steven just hit on all the major points of the turnaround, and just basically the rebuild starting that day officially. The team just, like you mentioned, we probably could have blew it up at any time, probably a year or two sooner, to maybe get a little more in trade value for some of the other players like Gordon and Fournier. But Vucevic, I mean, that deal was peak value almost a year after when it should have been peak value, and it was just the right time to find a team that was trying to make the playoffs, that was on the fringes, that also might slip back into the lottery if they didn't quite win enough, like the Hornets. And the Bulls were the team, and they were the highest bidder. I mean, that probably means his value around the league was around there, if that's how much the Bulls were willing to give up, because that's a giant couple first round picks and a young prospect. And I mean, I really liked Wendell back as a prospect at Duke, just as a solid all-around big man. I remember Marvin Bagley got a ton of the buzz back then as the lottery pick, with a little more potential and skill, finishing around the rim and the hops and the rebounding. But Wendell was just kind of more sound, I guess, and more that Al Horford comp, just like fits like a glove. Like he's just can slide into any lineup as a plus defender, 4 or the 5, be mobile enough to guard wings a little bit, and strong enough to bang bodies with just about any big down low. Like maybe Embiid and Jokic, like anyone give him problems, but he's a little undersized there. But I mean, his versatility and timing, and he still, will give Embiid problems from time to time too in the matchup. So, it's a great anchor defensively, as that's, to me, is like kind of the polar opposite of Vucevic. That, not to hate or anything there, but like my biggest critique, I guess, of building a defense or the front court around Vucevic is just, it's hard when the anchor of your defense on most teams isn't necessarily a plus defender or giving his best effort every night or is trading buckets, even though he's so skilled enough offensively. He's one of those guys that can do it. I mean, any given night he can give you 25 and 12. So, that is what you're kind of giving up to get that, to have a safe decision maker, good passer out of the post, and touch finisher, touch mid-range scorer. But for such a dominant scorer and mid-range shooter with jump hook as money as anything, he wasn't aggressive. He didn't draw contact. He didn't draw fouls. He didn't look for rim protection other than drop coverage falling back. So there's just a lot of things that, were tough to watch when, I just appreciate the hustle and defense and rim protection of a basic defensive anchor that you can build a defense around, like Jonathan Isaac has shown, or like Rob Williams for a year for Boston, or just any type of rim protector like that. But you build lineups around what you have, and the Magic were trying to compete, and arguably if Fultz had stayed healthy with that unit, they're trying to build a playoff team with Fultz, Gordon, Isaac, Fournier, and Vooch as the offense, and you can see the outlines of like an 8 seed or a 7 seed in that playoff territory. But it was just not meant to be, I guess, because there were a few more injuries, and it was about time to make a trade, because the fans were kind of like fed up for something to happen, and Vooch's value wasn't gonna get any higher than that. So it was the right time, and like you said, it reset the franchise in a huge direction, because Wendell's like a perfect fit for just about any lineup, especially as a 5, where you need like defense, strong screens, playmaking, everything from your big.
And I just want to add one last little part too. Something that's like really sneaky about this, and actually his agent got fired mostly because of this, probably. His contract that he signed, his extension that he signed with the Magic is phenomenal. This year he's only making $13 million, and it's a descending contract to 11.
Absolutely.
Basically 12 next year, and then his last season and 3 more seasons is going to be 10 million. So it's like we have so much cap flexibility with him. It's stupid to have a top 10, 12, 15 center, however you want to rank him, but a really damn good center making MLE or below the next couple of years, which is phenomenal. So
he's at like 18 plus defense, and just a little bit, he maintains that efficiency, gives you all around production. Like it's like fringe, definitely starter level value, not quite all star, but in those outlier talks if he can hit those numbers of 2010 and a plus defense. But you got to be the right season, like the Hawks, where 3 or 4 players on a really good team make the all-star team, and that's just a reason why. But either way, it's starter level player, talent, impact, like you said, for descending contract, where the value is like a role player or a bench player level contract, where back in the day it was like 5 or 6 million, and an MLE value is how much it is now, basically, where everything's almost doubled from whatever it is now 15 years ago, but the money just keeps going up. But that's as team friendly as a deal as it gets.
Yeah, that is ridiculous value, and people have to understand the versatility that Wendell Carter gives you in terms of, okay, the shooting touch is still developing, but it's clearly there. He's comfortable. He's super athletic. And like you said, he can be the back line for your defense. And then on top of it, we're only talking about player for player. Wendell's value to me is going up, while as good of an offensive talent as we saw for Vucevic to be, it's kind of going down as he goes up. And on top of that, Franz was also in the deal. So now it's like a complete reset in terms of this Magic young core. And I love what you said too, because Markelle Fultz that year, in terms of the way he was turning his entire NBA career around, the way he was getting to the basket, playing super physical. And then at the same time, with Jonathan Isaac breaking out with his defensive profile, I really viewed this Magic team as a team that damn, like there's a lot of length here. And Wendell fits into that idea perfectly. So this was an A+ trade, but then you get Franz on your team. And I know many Magic fans speak about Franz and how good he can be. RK, how do you feel about Franz Wagner moving forward as your, top 2 1A player on this Magic team?
Hey, I mean, Franz is a star already. I mean, he's a young star in this league. Paulo are one of the top duos already in this league, and on some nights he's definitely Orlando's best player, most consistent scorer, or at least half court pick and roll scorer. And what's nice is Orlando's building out this offense with different types of offense and different versatile scoring aspects, where Paulo can be more of an ISO back down post up threat and creator out of the elbow and the block, and mismatch hunting there as a scorer and a passer, or a short roller. And Franz and Fultz are more kind of pick and roll, half court maestros who will snake dribble, euro step, put somebody in jail dribbles like Chris Paul, and then Franz normally breaks out one of those finishing moves, that some new move every year. Like he's hitting like the Franz or the Dirk fades, like over he hit one over Luka to kind of like close a game against Luka in Orlando. That was pretty cool. And I got to see that one live with the fam, so always cool for that. And Franz is killer. I mean, we were just talking Wendell too. Wendell led the team in impact according to Cerebro Sports, and just outpacing Franz and Paulo all around +7 CRAM. And in just under 1,000 minutes together, Wendell, Paulo, and Franz had a positive net rating +2.3. And when you add Fultz to that unit, 680 minutes, they were plus 1.7 net rating. And like some fun facts there, like once Markelle Fultz returned to the lineup, I mean, that was, as everyone on the team says, like the big game changer this year. Like they were 5-16 without him. He returned to the lineup, and they were 500 over the next 58 games with 7th best defense, 6th best free throw rate, and one of 4 teams with 3 players driving to the rack at least 10 times per game, with the Clippers, Pelicans, and Celtics there. So they're 10th in drives, 12th in points off turnovers, 15th in pace. They're like just all these stats that show that they're playing defense. They're hustling off turnovers. And most importantly, just endless paint and sprays, driving kicks, like breaking down the defense, getting into the paint, making the defense collapse, and kicking out, whether that's a Paolo post up or ISO or yep, like we said, in pick and roll. And just Franz specifically is, like I said, I mean, already an all-star. He's like one of the team's closers. He was 4th in fourth quarter points among all players as of January, and fell down to about 9th by the end of the season. But he was just known on Twitter, Magic Twitter, like fourth quarter Franz. Like, we know he was coming to play. Fultz too at moments started to earn that rep as a closer, but Franz was the guy at any time he got looks, and he's just super efficient, good at kind of everything. And not to compare 2 white wing guys, but Austin Reeves and him just remind me of each other a little bit. We're super efficient, super just good decision-making basketball players who can handle the rock, run pick and roll, shoot, dribble, pass, make good decisions. They can go off for 20 any night. They can play plus wing defense. Just a good basketball player for any team. And he hit 19 points a game, shooting 49, 36, 84 on pretty high volume. So he definitely stayed efficient and was over 1 point per possession on just about overall and just about every play type, I think, or at least overall as an offensive scorer.
Yeah, he was great, man. And the thing that I like the most about Franz's game is he can play off the ball. He's good on the ball. He's a fearless guy in terms of shot making. And the funny part is, from his profile, you might not think it, but he's also sneakily athletic. Like, he has a couple crazy posters as well in his game. So he has the package to be a very potent 3-level scorer. And I love how you highlighted decision making, because to me, the most valuable trait in basketball, before defense, before shooting, before playmaking, is the IQ of the player on the floor. How are you going to be able to impact these lineups positively? What metrics? Like, where are you with that in terms of Franz? And Franz has been great at that at such a young age, which I'm kind of jealous, because as a Warriors fan, like, we could have had him, and just imagine if Franz was in a Golden State system.
Such a LaMelo, oh man,
that would have been so disgusting.
Not LaMelo, Franz with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Oh man,
ridiculous.
So close. I mean,
Steve-O.
Actually, like, you can't win every year.
You know, if we wanted to say one negative thing about Franz, which I'm not, is he doesn't have a mid-range game yet. But other than that, man, like, you can't say anything bad about the guy. He dunks on people left and right. You know, I mean, not like every moment of every game, but you'll get a poster every couple of games out of him. You know, RK said it beautifully, but it's just like he's fun to watch, smart cutter, runs a pick and roll really well when he's got the ball in his hands. Good defender, can improve there a little bit, but a good defender can and continuing to get better there. It's going to be fun to watch him and Paulo grow together.
And that does take us to the other guys that you also drafted before we get to, obviously Paulo. Jalen Suggs. I want to get your guys' thoughts on him. I kind of felt that his defense is legit. I'm just wondering where he slots at in terms of Cole Anthony, which in my mind, I think Cole Anthony's good, but I do believe he's better as like a 6-man type of value guy. Suggs is still developing like his overall offensive game, but in terms of his passing and his defense, those floor pieces for him are there. Where do you see the guard situation for Orlando maxing out as?
I'll let RK talk about the numbers a little bit more. I'm sure he's got those, like, can pull them up at his fingertips, but just like feel, team construction, fit. Yeah, man. So I don't know if we have our starting number 2 guard on long term on our team yet. I'll just say that way. So like when it comes to like Cole, Suggs, even like Jet Howard, I don't know if we have our guy who's going to be our starter in 3 years from now when we hope to be a really competitive playoff team yet. That might not be the case yet. But to speak about Suggs specifically, like his defense is already pretty darn elite. I'm not sure where it stacks up against like the rest of the league, but it's probably pretty damn high. His offense is he kind of fits more in that like combo guard role where it's like you don't want him being the primary on every possession, but like he can definitely handle the ball as a secondary playmaker. He can run the ball in transition. He's a pretty smart passer. People won't really realize it yet, but like he's dealt with a lot of injury so far, and I think that's had to come with why he's had so many struggles with his shot being consistent and not really being there. But if you look at his numbers from like the start of the year to the end of the year, and you start breaking them down from like the halfway point and get closer and closer to the end of the year, his shooting actually continued to get better over and over again, percentage wise. I think if you look at from like the last 30 or 35 games of the season, he was shooting like almost like 37 or 38% from 3 on I think 4 attempts per game. It's something around that. Don't quote me exactly, but it's probably pretty close to that. And so this is his first offseason actually healthy. Coming in as a rookie, I don't really count that as an off season because like you're moving, you're getting integrated with a new team and coach. They're probably just telling you to stay in shape, right? Until you get to training camp. And then his next season when it's like, oh shit, we know who this kid is as a player, like here's some things to work on. He was having ankle surgery. He didn't like really get, like he was recovering and rehabbing all of last off season. So this is his first off season where it's like, shit, I'm healthy. I'm going to go do cool things like basketball without borders overseas, and I get to work on my game without having to rehab an injury. So I really do think we're going to see Jalen take this next step in his game and then hopefully find some more consistency with his shot, because if he can start making his 3-pointers, at decent volume from 3, then we might have a starting center or a starting 2 guard on our team. As of now, it's yet to be known. But that's like my kind of theory on him. I agree, Cole. He's awesome. He's a really fun offensive player. I think defensively and size is what kind of keeps him in that 6-man type of projection. I do want to shout out Cole did come back the same game Fultz did. And so having 2 point guards last year come back at the same time, I don't want people to sleep on Cole because he's also a very good fundamental player for this team. His playmaking was only getting better last year too, and I'm really high on him too. I'm fine with letting those guys battle it out to see who's going to be the person, but if I had to make a projection, Cole, like Suggs might stick around a little longer than Cole, but no, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Cole was super efficient, like you said. Like the big thing there was just having a point guard like starting caliber in the lineup at all times, just compared to some of the early season lineups where Bol was initiating from the wing, just running some ISO offense like the roller coaster was let loose, but who doesn't love that? But Cole was one of the more efficient shooters as a pull-up shooter and a pull-up 3-point threat, 39% on 1 per game and 89% on the free throw line at 2.8 per game, second on the team in both behind Gary Harris, who basically just shot the ball so well from 3 that the Magic have no reason not to start him, not to play him. He fits exactly what that lineup needs right now, like you talked about, Steven. where like just that exact 3-and-D guard role. Like there's plenty of offensive creators. We just need some play finishers from the guard position who can knock down the three, attack closeout, make a good team first decision, attack the rack, and some Gary Harris stats. Like basically his efficiency just shot up as his usage went down. He went from 49% true shooting his first 20 games in Orlando up to 57% true shooting with Franz rookie season, and up to 62% once Paulo got here. And the usage dropped from 20 to 16 to 12 all 3 years. And as that happened, his threes just ballooned up. Like his 3-point rate went from 35% of all his shots to 55%, and then up to 71%. And his efficiency stayed right with it, with 36% on 3.3 to start, up to 38% on 5 threes, and then 43% last year on 4.5 threes a game. Like if Suggs has to, that's basically, like you said, like Suggs almost doesn't have to match that, but like he has to challenge that level of 3-point shooting. Like he has to be a better option than that shooter and that solid team first defense for the coach to play him, give him real minutes on a team that's trying to win every night and all that for the consistency reasons. But you know, other than that challenge this season, I still like definitely his potential as just everything we touched on, like a just super strong point of attack defender, one of the most elite like ball hawks in the league, where he's playing like defensive back almost, chasing guards around screens, like beating them to the ball. He basically had a pick six every game for a good layup off that, where he would just like a stagger screen or a Chicago set or something where someone's running off a screen to come get the ball. He just beats the guy he's guarding to the ball from the baseline around the defense and like ducks under screens to do. Is just insane to see there. And another thing on Cole was his pick and roll efficiency was like sneakily as efficient as Franz for that first season with Franz, where he got a ton of usage. So, you know, I was almost something of a critic of the pick when we made the pick, because I liked some other players for their potential, like Poku maybe not looking as good now, but Maxey and Bane just kind of fit I thought our lineup next, especially with Fultz as the other guy already there. That was kind of my thinking behind that. But Cole's proven me wrong a lot as a decision maker, especially. I'd say like his pick and roll decision making's been a lot more solid, consistent. Like he's a reliable point guard.
Cole last year was so fun watching him grow as a decision maker, in my opinion.
Right.
I just want to jump in. I just wanted to comment there because, like, to me, that's when I really saw it blossoming. And maybe it was happening a little bit before statistically, and I just wasn't like seeing it. But like, it just felt like as a playmaker, the game really slowed down from him right around Christmas-ish time, maybe a little, somewhere around there. It was really fun, and Fultz gets all the love. And granted, Fultz is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but like, Cole was a really big part of this team's success and going, basically from that time that we, going 5-20, after that, we basically were a 500 team and Fultz, major part of that, but Cole was also very much a major part of that too. So shout out Cole Anthony.
Absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned before, Gifted, like he just fits a perfect 6-man third guard role. Like
he's
a guy that can come off the bench, be a spark plug, maybe go off for 20, and one even slight edge above that Lou Williams type, where he's just getting buckets. Like he can actually run the half court offense. That's really what is reliable about him and Franz and Fultz, and hopefully now Anthony Black as well in the pick and roll, where you just have all these ball handlers who can run an efficient drive and kick offense and pick and roll, especially with strong screens from Wendell around the ISO Paulo versatility that Paulo brings as a one-on-one threat. And
I think what helps Cole too. I think what helps Cole too is, even though he might not be that plus of a defender, the size that they're gonna have around Cole in multiple lineups can make up for those flaws. Like having the personnel and the length in place for Cole to play with, and also his driving lanes and the way he gets to the basket with that, he's still gonna be a very productive player regardless of that.
Right, and he brings hustle. He brings energy as a even if he is a minus defender by size or speed, he's not gonna try every night. Like he's a mean shot blocker. Like he brings all that, and like you said, just a lot easier to hide a point guard than a center where you're giving length, and that's like the core belief of building at least the defensive side is it's a lot easier to cover up Steph with length and defense at every single position, 6'9" smart team first ball handlers with on top of the defensive anchor of Draymond, just all-time defense there. So you just have versatility, length, IQ, just smart defensive feel, and just in easier to build around that type of offense, like you're saying. And I guess I still could see Suggs becoming that dynamic guard option for us, but he might end up being a better fit elsewhere because of his skills. But I mean, I think his defense, and then the three-pointer, if that hits, the defense is already there. So if the three-pointer hits, then he's a reliable two-way starter with dynamic on-ball creation. And some of the good signs for the shooting, he shot 1.1 points per possession on handoffs, where that was one of the better half-court efficiency play types in the league, or for the team. It was one of the more efficient plays for the team, basically, where Suggs would just run a handoff or an off stagger screen, like we mentioned before, and he's a knockdown shooter, kind of running off the screen, even 1.0 points per possession off screens, and a solid 0.9 point per possession PPP running pick and roll. And also saw his 3-point percentage go up from 12% from year 1 to year 2. So just showing a couple good signs as a shooter. And one last thing is really just the consistency of the bench unit and everyone falling into their role, like we're touching on, Fultz being the clear starter, Cole being the clear second guy, and then Suggs became the clear third guy or fourth guy even, as Gary Harris was the starter. And on top of that, once Goga Bitadze was signed, those three kind of became the clear bench unit. It was clear Orlando had a second wave coming in of maybe not starters, but starter caliber young prospects. That's the ideal. That's what they're fighting for, and trying to give everyone competitive minutes at every position. And those three in 114 minutes had a plus 15 net rating, the highest on this, by far the highest three-man unit of any on the team. So it was a short sample size. They signed him off waivers, I want to say, from Indiana pretty late in the season, but a nice sign for next year that we have multiple waves pre-established of offense and creation, and just scoring creators that can dribble, drive, pass, score themselves, whether that's Markel in the mid-range, Franz at the hoop or from three, or Cole from three, on the ball, off the ball, and then Paulo, of course, like we mentioned a few times.
Yeah, I think this Magic team just has many different looks. And also, even if there is some type of guard logjam, you have talented players on the team that you can raise their value and trade for multiple assets moving forward anyway. And while Jalen Suggs has a lot to find out in terms of his offensive game as a Warriors fan, he ate our food. I vividly remember that competitive up and down game. He had 37 points, something super crazy. And I'm I've never seen him look like this. Yeah.
That was his career high, 26 points, clutch steals, and a pull-up jumper against Clay and Steph, just
with confidence too. And they needed him to do it at the end of the game to score.
He's had those moments. Yeah. That's always what's fun, is he had the game winner against Chicago where he just pulled up at the buzzer for three on a spinning step back. He had 4 threes against the Nets in one quarter once for 17 points, and one of his pick sixes patented for a slam, 17 points in the first quarter against what I think was the 2021 Nets, so with at least 2 of the stars still there, if not all 3 at the time. But he has his moments that really gives you encouraging signs like that. But you gotta put it all together, and for anyone to become a starter and then a star in this league, it's consistency, and he brings that on defense. So can he just bring that a little bit more on the shooting touch? And I mentioned before, I talked about Suggs with Ez on his podcast, and I believe is at Just Beyond Ez. I have to double check, but we talked a little bit just about his shooting development as well and where he could become. And, before the draft, it was comp to like Brandon Roy or Chauncey Billups and those type of big, strong, good decision-making scoring guards. And they're probably, reaches, but at least the play type of that arch type of just a super strong wing scorer who could back you down a little bit, ISO, ideally like Drew Holiday. I see the shooting looking a little bit like Marcus Smart at the moment, where it was super streaky early on, and he becomes a little bit more confident with the volume, and he's already shown enough promise there where, it's definitely positive returns. And I think one last thing is just the culture with Jamal Mosley being built here, and this team and this roster is all conducive to player development and players fighting for minutes, fighting for playing time, fighting for their role. And, because of that hustle culture being set here, that he's shown improvement when he was hurt as a finisher around the rim. So he just continues to improve. So as long as that happens, that's all you can ask. And he competes like hell. So that's what you want from, your ace defender on the wing.
I just want the listeners to know that we love basketball because we're spending this much time talking about Jalen Suggs because listen, the feel and the indicators are there, but I've held you guys off long enough. We got to get to the biggest draft pick of them all, Paolo Banchero coming in. Which people got to remember this too. No revisionist history will be allowed on this podcast. I remember this. The Magic, people thought the Magic were not going to draft Paolo. It was up in the air. DraftKings and all of these other sites were sure that it wasn't going to happen. And they shocked the world by taking the best player. So they draft Paulo, and I got to really point this out, right? What I remember vividly from watching him play, the opener versus Detroit, I was in the arena. I was in the Pistons arena watching it. I'm 10 minutes away. I literally saw this man play. And no stats, box score, just off the eye test, he looked physically different. The decision making and all of that was there in his very first game. I'm pretty sure he had 20 points. And the way that he gets to the free throw line, I mean, the way he the way he started the year, I'm pretty sure he was number 1 in free throw attempts for a good sample size a month, maybe 2 to 3 months, where he was getting the biggest whistle in the NBA. And him showing that already as a rookie, you just don't see that type of profile. And it feels weird because I feel like Paulo might be one of the most disrespected number 1 overall picks because no one talks about it. And it's this guy just casually averaging 20. I get it. His overall shot efficiency wasn't that great, but the fact that he was able to come in day one on that team, be their decision maker, and this versatile guy that just has size, length, and showed multiple peaks and valleys of what he could be, he was very impressive here his rookie season. Steve-O, how did you feel when your team first drafted Paulo, and how would you evaluate his rookie year?
I got receipts, man. I got receipts that said I wanted Paulo for a really long time. I was not on the Chet bandwagon fan. I was not on the Jabari Smith fan. I was Paulo from day one. Once I started doing some draft prep, it was pretty easy for me to fall in love with him with the number 1 pick. And the only reason why I say that is because 99.9% of the time, who I want is not picked, and who I want is also ends up being a shitty NBA player because I'm not a draft expert. So I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, man, Paulo's dope. He's exactly what we needed. A dude who the Magic haven't had a player average 20 points per game since Steve Francis. All right, let's just put that in perspective. Yeah, it's been a minute, right? Yeah, it's Steve Franchise, exactly. And I love Steve Francis, don't get me wrong, but that's how long it's been since we've had someone average 20 points per game, and to have a rookie who can do that, who's got a mid-range, who's got a paint game, who is sort of projecting to be someone who get more efficient from 3, right? Right now his 3's a little streaky, but he'll get it there, I'm sure. Having a 3-way scorer, 3-level scorer like that is just insane. And yeah, I don't know the numbers exactly, but he was getting to the line 8+ times a game to start the year. His defense, you know, he gets a little lost sometimes every now and then, doesn't like rotate properly. But overall, that the defensive issues for me seem more as like a help defender than like the one-on-one defender. He's actually like fairly decent one-on-one. I'm gonna reference FIBA right now. He's playing the 5 with FIBA, and that's not gonna be his primarily role with the Magic. But as he's gaining this experience as more of a role player, having to focus a little bit more on defense and rebounding, those skill sets are only going to help make him a better wing player that can situationally go into a center rotation and just make him a little bit more versatile. Because now we have him, he could play the 3, the 4, the 5 occasionally. You know, it's like he's just what you need. We haven't had a guy that just go get fucking buckets. Sorry for the language, but I just get really excited talking about him. Yeah, he's dope. I don't really know what else to say.
Banchero, I mean, he's a star, man. What's not
Yes,
to
sir.
like?
What's your most RK, let me ask you a question, man. In your opinion, what was your biggest surprise about his game when he joined the Magic?
Great question.
Biggest surprise, probably that immediate impact as a scorer and almost like a culture changer. Just like the show is in town, like, you know, you're getting like a star to watch, like that's getting promoted, like a mix of Melo and LeBron, like this crazy super athlete who's just super bulky. He's like the same height as Jokic, but about 20 or 30 pounds less. But that's like 6'10", 250 compared to like 6'11", 280, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is just an example of like he can, especially for the Olympics, a little more agile maybe, but he can play a little center, play a little 5 as an offensive creator at that size. But like you said, maybe giving up low as defense. But, I mean, a ton of great things to just love about him. I mean, the mid-range touch and the tough shot making is obviously my favorite aspect. Okay. I mean, as a fan, like, Melo's one of my favorite players of all time, and Braun too, but just Melo's tough shot making and baseline fadeaways and elbow jab pull-ups, like just Paulo having that in his game and like breaking it out for fans like at the right times, like as the Magic secure a win, that he'll go and like just drop a little baseline fade for everybody with a minute to play, just for good measure. Like, it's super fun to watch basketball wise, and like the stats go for days. Like the free throws you guys touched on, like he's top 20 all time as a rookie for volume at 7.4 free throws a game, tied with Zion. So, you know, like he's a mismatch hunting tank, just attacking the rim with a head of steam, drawing fouls like easy. And that's got to be the most impressive thing, because early on it was like Shaq level volume and efficiency of 74%, like a LeBron or something like that as a prospect. So it's just, you get the volume threat and the efficiency where you're not actually taking him off the floor or anything like that. You're not scared to play him at the end of a game, where Shaq and Dwight, other Magic stars, number 1 picks, would get the free throws, but obviously like no one was excited to watch them at the free throw line for 5 minutes. So that's one big difference, where just the volume and efficiency there at his size as a rookie is insane as a free throw drawing just machine, and kind of looking at his scoring efficiency going forward, because if he's drawing fouls like LeBron or Zion and scoring the same 20 points a game, that just a little bit more volume ticks that up to 25, 28 real quick. And, you know, like you said, he probably has to become a little more consistent defensively, but his versatility probably was seen as a minus 10 years ago, where he doesn't have a position, but now he can play 3, 4, or 5, and he's the mismatch. He walks into the league as this guy that can just post up anyone, speed past anyone, like
which he can punish.
Man, like he'll hit like wings, as like the Houston game was the best example of that, where like he hit I want to say Eric Gordon with like a hezzy cross step back slam, where he just like sped right past him, and then right after that, Usman Garuba at center, like a pretty strong center for his size, both pretty young prospects, but he just beat him on a baseline, like post him up 3 times down, back him down, and then throw a spin drop step slam on him. Like, it was just overpowering the bigs and speeding past the smalls. Like he's a walking mismatch in that sense. So I mean, there's a ton to like. His one-on-one game is insane. You caught his like dunk of the year probably in that first game. Like he came out with a bang, just throwing
Ridiculous,
down
man.
a poster. He said that was his favorite dunk this year. He's had a lot of them, but I mean, how could you not? Your first game just come out banging. Some crazy stats from that game. Like he was the most points scored in an NBA debut with 27 since Allen Iverson 27 years ago. And only 3 number 1 picks since 69 have dropped 25, 5, and 5 in their debut. So it's Paulo, LeBron, Kareem, and that's it. That's the list.
He just looked freakish out there, man. Like I went in there like, okay, fun. We'll see like how competitive things are. And Paulo just like stole the show with his athleticism, the poise, the willpower, the resiliency. Like I love how he's not afraid as a rookie to take the mid-range shot, because most people are like iffy on it or whatever, but he has confidence in his game. And more than anything, like while sure the defense could be better, I think that the framework and the IQ is coming together. And obviously in FIBA, I mean, the work that I saw him doing defensively in FIBA, it's going to be scary for the league this year when you combine that with how am I forgetting his name? We literally, this is so bad.
Franz.
No, sorry, not Franz.
Wendell.
Wendell. Yes, crazy. Yes, Wendell and Paulo collectively, like the size and length and the switchability is the biggest thing. Having your 5 and your 4, maybe 3-man be that interchangeable like that to that extent to be switchable enough, and Paulo is learning the ability to play help side better. That's a very good combination for your defense. And to have a guy that's just not afraid to put his head down, play bully ball, punish switches, attack the paint, and get to the free throw line, which to me, by far, that was the most impressive thing from his rookie year, because for a rookie to be leading the NBA in free throws as a rookie, you have to think about like the context of how insane that is. And it was by a pretty good margin at the start of the year too. So I give him a lot of credit in that regard for sure.
And rookies don't get calls. Like you have to make it clear, like the ref has no choice but to call a foul, because like that's how clear, unstoppable, unguardable the guy is in certain situations with the head of steam. If you don't foul him, and even then he's probably going to get a shot at. But he had so many head of steam plays, like this one crazy dunk on Jaren Jackson Jr. even, where he timed it up perfectly and got the fast break. Paulo power slammed, threw it. Basically, Ja just got out of the way. Jaren went for the block from behind, and Paulo beat him to the spot. Yammed it. I mean, he got the shot blocker on that one, and he just has a ton of those like highlights and dunks. I mean, another fun stat, like he recorded 2 career highs in his 10th career game, 33 points and 16 rebounds, joining LeBron as the only teenager in NBA history to record that, and the first Magic rookie since Shaq to do it. And a bunch of the stats kind of just similar to, you just see a lot of these great names. I mean, that he just racks up 20-point games, 40 20-point games, the same number as LeBron in his rookie year. And the last 3 players to score 20 plus in 15 of his first 20 was Jordan, Zion, and Paulo. So it's just great names, great stats. And his efficiency fell off a little and scoring fell off a little as the year went on. So that's one thing to check out. Like, what is it? His rookie season? Is it? You know, what does that have to do with? So, obviously, like anything, consistency and of the great play is finding that impact within his role and kind of growing that role as a star. And you know, we'll see. Is Paulo going to be the leading usage scorer type, like everyone thinks? Is Franz going to sneak in there and take more shots than him going forward, or you know, kind of like Brown and Tatum? I mean, there's enough shots to go around for 2 elite wings like Kawhi and George or anywhere. So you just, as long as the fit is nice, which I think really is, especially offensively with the versatility that both bring as like a methodical, slowed down creator versus Paulo's just all around one-on-one creation, self-creation there. So just a super versatile offensive attack and a ton to like about the offense going forward there.
I think that there's a ton to like with Paulo on this roster for sure. I do think though that for the Magic ahead of 2024, this is going to be a team that is super reliant on their size, their length, their athleticism, and their defense. but there were moments last year where like the offense sometimes will look a bit wonky with the spacing. I think the biggest downfall potentially for the Magic this year would be the offense over the defense. What are you expecting to see this year offensively from this Magic team, Steve-O?
Yeah, man. It's gonna be, I think, pretty similar offensive style. The roster hasn't changed that much. A lot of dribble handoffs. That's one of Coach Mo's like favorite ways to run this team. He'll throw. There's definitely pick and rolls in there too. But one thing that I think we'll see better is more spacing. The Magic were like a bottom 5 3-point shooting team last year in attempts taken and even percentage, roughly bottom 5. But this year they're bringing back our man Gary Harris. They picked up his option. He's back with us. I expect him to probably be shooting, around 40% again next season. They picked up Joe Ingles, and a lot of people are like, why are we signing a 35-year-old guy who's just getting off an ACL tear? Well, the dude shoots 40% from 3 on 4%, 4 takes a game, a smart passer, doesn't need the ball, but can definitely play with the ball. And that right there is just someone at the wing that can shoot the ball at a high level. So now we have Gary Harris at a 40% shooter. We have Joel Ingles at a 40% shooter. And then you have guys that are going to internally continue to improve. Now, I don't expect everyone to all of a sudden take a step in their shooting, but I do expect some people to be more consistent with it and better with it. I do expect Franz to take a bit of a step. I do expect Suggs to take a bit of a step there. At least percentage-wise, I'm sure he'll have some off nights. But I do expect him to do a little bit better there. Fultz, I don't expect to be better there. Mostly because he's just never going to shoot the volume to bring the spacing. Cole, at least be the same he was last year, which was pretty good. I'm not sure how much better of a shooter he could be, but maybe he can be a better shooter and continue to improve. Goga's even shot a couple of threes. Granted, the centers are never going to take a high enough volume to really affect spacing to where they're going to be respected from the arc. But, I do think we'll slowly get there. Now, my goal is that we just get to maybe around like the at least out of the bottom third of spacing, right? Okay. If that's possible, right? If Jonathan Isaac comes back, he can be a decent shooter. He's shown that he has some spacing abilities there. Probably not a 40% shooter, but maybe he can get to like 36, 37%, with his touches if he's healthy and available. So, to me, that's the biggest thing. Last year, we just didn't have it. We had guys that were injured and just not enough internal growth that happened. We had some guys grow throughout the season, but I don't know if that growth was enough for them to really like change their perspective on how they're playing. So hopefully we see a little bit more this year.
I think for me, the biggest X factor for the Magic, and you guys might disagree, so let me know how you feel about this. My vision for this team, and this is me obviously being like third-party outsider fan or whatever, but I like the idea of Franz and Paulo pick and rolls in terms of the switches Paulo's going to be able to punish. And if Wendell can get himself like higher in terms of corner 3-point shooting, it's like, okay, now you have a dynamic pick and roll where, Franz, I believe the indicators for his mid-range have shown. He still has to like do that on more volume, sure, but the 3-point shooting alone is going to make that pick and roll combination work. And Paulo as a diver in the pick and roll, I don't have the numbers, but I love him being the secondary playmaker out of that because there's so many actions. Like he can either catch it and post up, he can pass to either the left or the right wings. The versatility with that is great. And Wendell specifically, I trust the shooting indicators with him to continually develop. And if that team moves in that direction, I think that really maximizes your offensive approach. I think. RK, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Orlando's offense next year comes down to pretty much what it looked like once Fultz and Cole came back to the season last year, where they're trying to be top 10 in defense, top 10 in drives, top 10 in drawing fouls, and building a drive and kick, paint and spray type offense around that, where it's constant, like y'all mentioned DHOs, Chicago sets, a lot of horns, flares is a fun way to get Franz and Paulo both involved, where you have two screeners at the top and you have kind of like a Spain pick and roll or a horns action where you have multiple screeners moving to the off the ball at once, threatening the roll, the pop, and you're able to just take advantage of everyone's versatility and scoring threat that way. And really built off their defense should be their identity, because it starts with Coach Mosley's hustle and putting that, the hustle bell in practice right when he got there, just emphasizing hustle plays, rewarding that type of culture, like diving for loose balls, rotating strongly, and just knowing where to be and not taking gambles. And Orlando saw that play out. I mean, the players, Fultz tweeted out 4th seed back when he was just coming back from injury last season, I think, and he was just projecting like, we're going to be a 4 seed once I'm good to go, once I'm healthy. And the way the East shakes out, I mean, there's a lot of teams that Orlando could jump if they're, if they repeat as top 12 defensively. That's a contender status level defense. So there's now Paulo, Franz, Fultz, and Anthony Black, all 6'7" ball handlers running pick and roll, ISO, handoffs, plus Cole off the bench as well. And Black will probably come off the bench at first as well. But just all these different guys that can drive, that can push the pace, that can grab the board with good feel, good vision, all lethal on transition. I mean, there's not one player that hurts them in transition other than like maybe a big, but even then they can knock down the trailer threes. And like you mentioned, I mean, Wendell's development there from a volume standpoint and corners specifically would be huge. And that's a big question mark kind of with Fultz and Wendell bookending the lineup around Paulo, is you can only have so many non-shooters on the floor. And if you think Fultz isn't necessarily progressing there or going to be a catch and shoot threat that defenses are scared of, your point guard, you basically need 4 knockdown shooters around that, or it's going to be really tough to create space. And thankfully Fultz has showed, a smidge of hope here and there. Maybe we're looking too much into it as fans, but like the form looked better on the last few threes. At the end of the season, there was some like pull-ups where it was all in rhythm and looked like his mid-range, and like Twitter freaked out because he was like, oh, we've never seen him shoot a 3 like that, where there's no hitch or anything. He just stepped right into it confidently. And so that's always good to see. So the threes will probably define how good the offense is, like you mentioned, because a lot of the self-creation, the decision makers are there. Are there enough play finishers to knock down the threes, keep the ball moving, attack the closeouts, and score efficiently? And you would think year 2 Paulo, year 3 Franz and Suggs, Fultz and Wendell returning healthy, just a lot of things right at the moment for this basketball team, on top of Anthony Black and Jet Howard being shot into the mix. 2 more rookies that, Jet has a ton of exciting, tough shot making, 3-point shooting, versatility to his game, where, you could maybe, my hope for him was maybe like if not a 6-man, like the absolute hope is more like a CJ McCollum, like mid-range scoring guy who can run off some screens and hit a few dribbles, hit the one dribble pull up, or just score at will from all 3 levels efficiently and hit tough shots. But that's putting an ideal out there, but at least the play type and the archetype in that sense. But that's exciting. And then Anthony Black as well is like super fun playmaker. He's 6'7", who can run the offense, and basically, and I almost think of him as like an injury reserve at first, where he can, if Fultz or Franz or Paulo are out for a game, you just throw Anthony Black in that lineup and you're still getting plus defense, length, plus feel, plus vision, like all these positives of a team first 2-way connector, where they're filling out the rotation with these long, strong, smart decision makers like Fultz and Anthony Black, where I compared those two specifically to like Iguodala and Sean Livingston back in the day on the Warriors teams, where you're getting these just like strong, smart, two-way team first connectors who make any team and any rotation, any lineup better, as long as you kind of have that shooting gravity aspect made up for it around them and a balance on the court, where maybe there's, at this point, it's hard to get away with more than one non-shooter on the court at any given time, just like any more one or two defenders that can't switch or can't guard 1 through 5, or at least 1 through 4 or 3 through 5, or a little bit of versatility there. So those are things that are hard to cover up. And at the same side of the defense being hard to build around for a center who's not a great defender, then flipping that coin is a point guard that can't shoot. It could be hard to build an offense around that. But Fultz is such a versatile mid-range scorer, foul drawer, creator. He's a masterful point guard. Like he's just drawing fouls. He's can do everything you want in a half court, running the break, flashy passes, loves the game, playing with joy again. And like compared to say the Ben Simmons situation, looking at a few years back, that's really nice to see Fultz kind of have that turn somewhere else. And you hope Ben gets that chance this season with Michael Bridges and Claxton up in Brooklyn maybe. But it's just nice to see Fultz like proven every single person wrong that talked about him for years that way, and just all these different versatile playmakers for Orlando to build around and know that their identity is just hustle, back to defense, hustle, drive, push the pace, drive and kick, and a lot of that efficiency will come down to the shooting around it.
Absolutely. Turning defense into offense is going to be the bread and butter of what Orlando is trying to execute. Now, we're an hour in the podcast. I want y'all to know I saved these last 2 questions. These are the biggest questions of the podcast. So brace yourselves. I need honesty from you guys. I'm going to start with Steve-O. Steve-O, I'm looking at you right now, Steve-O, okay? Sell me on Jonathan Isaac next season. Is he playing a lot of games? Is he in the long-term vision for this team? What's the word with Jonathan Isaac?
Man, all right, I'm just going to be real. When Jonathan Isaac's on the floor, we saw it last year, still a really good defender, right? Still defending at a high level, good decision maker with the ball in his hands, was even hitting some shots from 3 and had a couple decent finishes. It looked good when he was healthy playing in those. I think he was averaging about 11 minutes a game in 11 games. The problem is he then had an injury, which set him back. But apparently all the word on the street is he's had a pretty phenomenal offseason and he's in great shape, and same story we've heard for a couple of years now, but it's tracking that he'll be ready for training camp and ready to start the season. So I have to give that caveat, right? Because he's injury prone. He's played 11 games in 3 seasons. Right. So now that that's out of the way, if he is healthy and if he can play 40, 50 games, dude, that's a game changer for this Magic team, right? He'll be load managed some. He probably won't play back-to-backs. He'll probably have, some form of limit restrictions on him. But, he's a versatile defender, even from what we saw last year, that can still guard, 3, 4, 5, even 2s probably to an extent. He might not be as quick as he used to, but he's still a really high-end level defender. And if he's back, man, that changes the game defensively for this team. That means, you're not stuck with Goga and Mo Wagner playing the 5 because you just have more options there. And no disrespect to those guys, but in my opinion, neither one of them are really true second unit defenders for winning teams. You have more versatility on the wings because Jonathan Isaac can also defend the paint, but he can also is a phenomenal wing defender and really good at keeping his offensive players in front of him. Really smart team defender as well. Offensively, he's smart. He's a lower usage guy, particularly now with how this team is built. You just want him to hit open shots, make smart cuts to the basket. He's always had a pretty good IQ for making smart cuts. He's not going to be someone that's probably going to make a whole lot for the team. We don't really need him to do that, but he can come in, give you 40, 50 games, playing good defense. and hitting respectable shots from three and making smart cuts and finishes at the basket, man, the Magic got a hell of a player on. That's a hell of a bonus. And he is truly looked at a bonus. And the great thing is, man, like, let's say none of that happens and he blows his ACL again within 10 games of the season. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that. But with his injury history, you have to assume like maybe something could happen. Well, the Magic can get off of his contract with only owing $7 million guaranteed by January 1st, all right? Or January 10th, excuse me. So like not only is he, the Magic he's like unguaranteed the following year. So the Magic can get off him pretty easily. And also he could be used as a trade filler pretty easily for teams that want to have some more salary cap flexibility. So he's kind of like he can't really hurt us. Even if he's not playing, cool, we have financial flexibility with his contract. But if he's healthy, man, this defense is going to be real exciting. You got him, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, Markel Fultz on the wings, Franz. Man, it's going to be a fun Wendell. It's going to be a fun defensive team that can do a lot of switching with size and length, which, I mean, that's what you want in this NBA. I'm psyched. I really am excited to see if he can come back and be a contributor to a level. I don't expect him to play more than 50 games, though. 55
I had
maybe.
to save his name for once we got through the entire team because I was on the bandwagon for a very long time. Now it's been 3 years, so I'm slightly off of that bandwagon. Like I'm hanging on by like one pinky, right? But like the last time we saw him fully healthy, like he was defensive player of the year caliber that season. And what I vividly remember is the shooting prowess in the corners was actually coming. I think he shot like maybe 33% or whatever from the corners. Granted, the volume might not be as high, but you saw the confidence in that shot rising, and then he doesn't play basketball for like 3 years. So I bring him up because I think the identity for this Magic team is defensive first, obviously, because the offense might not be as reliable as you would want it to be. But if you get games from him at that defensive level, you fully buy into that identity. And again, the versatility point, you have another guy, because as tolerable as Mo and Goga can be, Jonathan Isaac at his peak defensively is a much better player than those guys and will hold more value for this Magic team. So I just wanted to see how Magic fans felt, because he hasn't played in a very long time. So a lot of people are like kind of fully off of the bandwagon. But how about you, RK? How does Jonathan Isaac intrigue you, and do you see him as like a long-term fit in the future for this team?
Yeah, y'all hit on all the major points. I mean, his defensive versatility and impact is as strong as anyone in the league when he's healthy. Like, I think of his defense back then as like an anchor, just like a Jaren Jackson or a Bam would be on defense. Now, can he get to those heights offensively is the big question of like such a big swing of his skills, whether he ends up kind of coming back as more of a role player or a starter or even a star when it comes to that high level impact defense. And like you think of the front court with versatility, like you mentioned, between Franz, Paulo, and Isaac in a front court together, where you have just all around scoring and defense with an anchor like there. And I think one comp is, I mentioned a little bit, the Celtics, where you have these star wing scorers in Franz and Paulo, like Tatum and Brown, and then you have Wendell and Al Horford kind of anchoring down low, and they have Rob Williams as this elite shot blocker who arguably impact-wise, block-wise, was almost the sneaky defensive player of the year when when Smart won it. And Smart, big fan of his defense. I'm one people that think Tatum and Rob were basically just as impactful defenders for that team that year, but I'm glad Smart won it as kind of like, the embodiment, the hustle guy who's been an elite guard defender, like only behind Drew Holiday pretty much in the league for years now. So it's nice to see one of them get recognized for their defense that way. And kind of with Suggs there as another comp, just these team first two-way players surrounding these wing scorers. And you can see like at the upside, Jonathan Isaac's defense fits perfectly for what this team needs. They have plenty of offense ready to go. You mentioned the shooting signs in the corner on that playoff team was huge for helping them make the playoffs. He was like, I credit him the most for that playoff run because we had a top 12 defense led by him and Aaron Gordon's versatility, but especially his top level defense where like for a minute there he was leading the league in blocks and steals alongside Anthony Davis, like tied just for all the way through December, I think, and then he got hurt for all that time.
He was in that conversation for DPOY before he got hurt. I vividly remember his name and that season to a T. You're absolutely right about that, RK.
Yeah, I mean, he was putting up numbers and like clearly a rim protector, clearly a like either a one-team defense or at least an anchor for a winning team on the defensive end. But the offense is a huge swing. You have to be able to bring positive impact in some type of role offensively, and you want to see. I'd like to see him embody a little bit of Bam, even though Bam has just a ton more skill, so it's not the best comparison there. But just in the handoffs and the ability to just kind of be a roller to the rim, finisher nearby, maybe have some counter moves off that, and knock down the catch and shoot three, like would just be huge. But Bam is obviously much more of a point guard and ball handler and all these things. So really he has the defense to hang when he's healthy with anybody and to anchor a lineup there. And, you know, before Franz and Paulo, it wasn't long ago where Isaac was the untouchable player on this roster. Yeah. And when they were exploring Vooch trades, like I think it was Zach Lowe reported the front office saying like he's untouchable to hang up the phone when teams call about Isaac. This was pretty early before the injuries or right as they were starting up. But, you know, that shows the team's value of him. And that probably doesn't change other than the fact that the injuries keep piling up. So the contracts are going to become more team friendly off that. And, you know, as long as he can play in this league and has value as a defender, I think, you know, especially at that contract, like it's just worth keeping him on the roster because you're not going to get a possible defensive player of the year impact for $12 million anywhere else, or I think his is more like 15. But you know, that's a rotation level, backup level, and Wendell's on that deal too, and Fultz is kind of on that deal too. So you have just these young players, good players piling up on the team where none of the deals are over 20 million on the roster. They're all 12 to 18 or like 3 or 5. And so every player is kind of movable in that sense. But, you know, Franz and Paulo have pretty much secured their spots as the stars of the future. Fultz has just about earned that fan favorite point guard duty spot. And Wendell's done everything he can to be the anchor now. So, you know, Isaac's good enough defender to, you know, maybe placate Wendell there eventually. But even that is kind of a lot at this point. Like, we're just hoping he plays. We're just hoping he shows up. I've been hoping for his comeback for years, and he's come faked us a few times with these preseason. I'm ready to go, and then not quite. But man, I'm just rooting for him to play. It's great to see him play on the court. I mean, he's just one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best I've ever seen, because you just get so much versatility and length and defense, just like a Jaren Jackson, where he's just everywhere at once, every play defensively, protecting the rim, switching out. And like, I remember he was shutting down superstars that season, like holding Anthony Davis and Kristaps to scoring way less than they would normally, just having bad games as an example. So that kind of shows his strength as a 4 or 5 man on top of how he was basically guarding wings. And, you know, he's probably best at the 4, but he combined with Paulo at the 5, you could just play them together as rim protectors if you wanted to be just mix up the versatility of a lineup. You can kind of go all versatile as a front court there. And that's the ideal that he plays eventually. But, you know, we got to see him get back in the court, and anything would be good. I mean, just playing a role 12 minutes a game would be great. I just imagine he's kind of on the Kawhi path playing time-wise now, where back-to-backs are mostly out, and he's going to be precautious at every turn just to keep his career alive and well and going as long as possible, as he should do for himself as a player, and, you know, look to extend these deals because he was a top 6 pick and has all this potential impact where he could be getting big money as one of the best defenders in the league, as Gobert just showed. But you got to show it on the court consistently and anchor that defense a few years in a row before teams are ready to kind of think of you as Anthony Davis, where they'll put up with the risk because of the idea.
Hey man, I love how that went. I'm telling you, in preparation for this podcast, I said I'm gonna ask him the Jonathan Isaac question. I'm gonna wait. We're gonna like go through all these questions, because to me, Jonathan Isaac, ironically enough, is such an embodiment. Yeah, like I'm sorry. I'm confident to say that there's no other podcast that is gonna spend 15 minutes talking about Jonathan Isaac and his future. And I wanted to do that because to me, Jonathan Isaac, ironically enough, is like the symbol for what embodies Magic basketball, like the length and the size, the versatility. Like where the NBA is going now is they're combining skill and size at pretty much every position. And almost more than any team in the league, the Magic are a team that are trending in that direction. Anthony Black, super long athlete, size, plays defense, can play make. Wendell, Paulo, interchangeable 4 or 5. And then with Isaac, it's like this guy that's long enough to guard 5s, 3s, 4s, and even in spot minutes could also be switchable on guards. Like you're talking about length and size at every position. And I just feel like for him, he hasn't been healthy enough to show that value to adding to the versatility of the Magic. But maybe we see it, maybe we don't. I just had to ask you guys that before we get to the final question, which here, this might be easier for you guys. What are your expectations officially on paper, on the record, for the 2024 Orlando Magic?
Playoffs.
Yeah. Playoffs. Play in for me.
Like if we're not a play-in seed at this point, that's almost borderline disappointment. The way this team is talking, the way this team views themselves as just a hustle culture, like the front office is saying we're ready to win, no more giving young prospects minutes just to do it. Like we're trying to win basketball games. The way Fultz talks about saying 4 seed and the whole approach and just natural development. I mean, I think expectations, they got to be in the play-in tournament. Looking at next year's teams, I mean, that's 8 through 12. I'm still getting used to these new rules. I don't even know if that's right.
Yeah.
But, and after, or maybe it's, 7 through 10. Sorry for the play-in. But, you got to be top 10. That's like Charlotte and Chicago territory. We almost snuck in there last year. And just, I want to say, up to the final week, just missed it. But that just shows you, like, at the pace we were going last year, we're a 500 team. The Magic are, and they're a top 12 in all the hustle stats and the defense. And you just got to see expectations, got to be playing. But I'd say upper ceiling of being one of maybe not home court in the playoffs, but 5, 6, 7 seed. I mean, probably aiming for it, like you said, that 4 seed. But there's a couple contenders still in the East that are probably a bit too good to get up on that level with, Milwaukee, Boston. We'll see what happens to Philly, but Miami could get a little older, maybe get Dame, maybe not, but we'll see. But there's the East is a little open in that 4 to 8 category at least. So I think that's Orlando's for the taking.
I'm more in the play-in range. I think that's like pretty comfortable there. Rough win projection, like 40 to 43, 44 wins. I'm kind of in that space with this team. And mostly, like, I still don't know how we're going to be health-wise. If we're league average health-wise, then we should be pretty solid. And also just because I think a lot of other teams also got a lot better this offseason too. The league is really hard to win in, and as much as I love Orlando and think we are making those steps and going in the right direction, I'm not sure I'm ready to say we'll be a top 4, top 5. I do think that 7, 8, 9, right, that's right where we should be, or at least where I think we'll be. and it's a young team. There's still going to be some growing pains to go through, but I think we're on the right track, and I 100% agree. If we don't make the play-in, and I'll say this, if we don't make the play-in and have a good play-in game, even if we lose, it'll be a disappointment, right? I could be okay with losing the play-in, simply because of lack of experience in those types of games and environments. But I would like to at least be like really competitive in however we end our season. So, but I'm expecting to have a good play in the mid-season tournament cup. I'll be home for one of those games in November, which will be really exciting. I'm excited if the Magic make the play-in. I will be at that game. I'm not sure where it's at, but I will fly to it and spend way too much money, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey.
Yeah, man, go Magic.
Man, it's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Paulo All-Star season, is that the expectation now? Like coming off the Olympic play, or not Olympic?
That's mad house for Paulo.
International player. Is he All-Star next? I mean, he's gonna have the buzz. He'll probably hit the numbers again. I mean, if he hits 25 and the Magic are in the playoffs, I mean, even if he doesn't hit 25, he still might make it. He almost made it this year. I think it was like
if the Magic had a better record. And we're in more media people's mouths, he would have had a better shot.
In that conversation for sure.
Right. Yeah. And he's really been like marketed by Team USA as one of the faces. Like he's really like being a young face of the league almost prominently, and that just helps with the voting and recognition from coaches and everyone for when you're making tough choices about All-Star. But I think that's something of an expectation. Could at least one All-Star between Franz and Paulo making that jump. And like you just said, it comes down to the wins. I mean, if they're a 3 seed, maybe they both make it. If they're an 8 seed, maybe one of them sneaks in. It's hard when you're a 11 seed to have an All-Star, even if you're putting up solid numbers. Because the way these games are going these days, there's a 20-point scorer or a couple 18-point scorers on just about every team. There's enough shots for everybody to go around. So can you be efficient? Can you bring winning impact? Can you win games and get those numbers in your role? That's the question there, and I think one of them has a pretty good chance. I'd probably say Paulo of the two. Like I expect Paulo to be the All-Star face, taking even just a small leap as a year two with the experience from international play. Like you mentioned before, he's playing some small ball center, getting some mismatch hunting versatility.
Yep.
Playing with like ease out there, just a transition tank, like a force, just like showing off the ball handling and play finishing slams, just unstoppable, transitioning with a head of steam. So just a ton to like it as a star going forward.
So I think for me, as a outside perspective on the Magic, I've had this conversation multiple times. Shout out to my guy Tony. We talk on the phone about basketball almost all the time, and he's argued me like, "Oh, the Magic are coming." He's been high on the Magic for like 3 years, right? So, so like, yeah, he is very much a fan of this Magic team as a Heat fan. So like, he's rooting for y'all. But the conversation that we had was, okay, for the Magic to make the playoffs, ideally, the teams you're talking about, Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, Cleveland, the Knicks, Miami, like those are the other teams. But the teams that you would directly be competing would be like the Hawks, the Nets, the Bulls, and the Pacers. Those are the real teams. Detroit has a hat in this conversation as well. I do think they're going to be better with Cade, Asor, the new head coach, who is a great youth coach, because obviously what he did for the Suns was big. But I think that's the real conversation. And I guess my question is, if it comes down to the Pacers and the Hawks to make the playoffs, I think that becomes a real conversation. I really do. And I think it's tough because I think the Pacers, before Halliburton got hurt, were like in that conversation to be like this really good team. They were surprising a lot of people. But at the same time, the Magic are just going to have better, I guess, overall depth. It's weird because the Pacers team doesn't move you on paper, but they somehow win a lot of games when Tyrese Halliburton is at the helm. Where do you guys think the Magic fit in that conversation? Because if it's a winner go home, do or die game, the defense is what is going to carry the Magic in my mind.
Yeah, seeing their hustle, just like alarm time. like Steven mentioned before, just making sure they show up and give their hustle. And as long as they give their all, like that's the big thing about these Mosley teams is they just don't give up. They're the big difference between previous teams. Down 15, no lead is safe.
Right.
Like they're just the second team comes in and they'll hit you just as hard, and the effort is almost better coming off the bench than whoever was out there last. And that mentality, just the dog mentality, should keep them in just about any game, especially a one game setting. And like you mentioned, that's all you can really like hope for and expect is just fighting. Take that next step as a team that's slowly building from within, and some realistic competition there in that 7 to 10 range. And like basketball happens, players get hurt, they get older, young players age into their prime a little bit more, so maybe one team falls off as another team ascends, as you see there. But Tyrese Halliburton is one of the best passers in the league, one of the best playmakers, creators in the league. So it's no joke that like he's just creating threes on his own as a driver, and just super high field decision maker, scorer, all-star type. Just super good player. So no surprise they were winning a lot of games with him, and definitely miss him once you lose your playmaker like that with all these play finishers around them to not necessarily set him up, and especially paired with Buddy Hield, sneakily one of just the best 3-point shooters ever, especially volume wise, and just been a knockdown shooter for a while now. So perfect match in that sense of just somebody to play finish all those driving kicks. Interesting matchup if it comes down to those teams for sure in that range. I mean, but Orlando's scoring versatility should be up there with anyone in that range in theory. With even best case might be everyone healthy, but that's unrealistic. But even if Isaac doesn't play a game and Anthony Black is a solid enough rookie to play winning impact minutes and just kind of fill in for the other stars, like last year's pace is what I generally expect of roughly 500 team, fully healthy, that they could push a little stronger if they're fully healthy, or if they are fully healthy and other teams aren't, a little injury luck their way, maybe they do fight a little higher. But realistically, like y'all been saying, like that play-in range 500 is right where they're at already. So why can't they basically improve or sustain that level of play with little turnover and just adding another really good basketball player? We mentioned Anthony Black a little bit. His defensive stats from Cerebro were like off the charts in this FIBA U18 tournament. Just super great hustler, 6'7" point guard who averaged 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 steals in 6 games during that tournament in FIBA U18, and just a nice 74 floor general rating from Cerebro as well, and putting up those like all around filling up the box score stats at Arkansas as a freshman: 13-5, 4 assists to 3 turnovers, but 2 steals and half a block. So super energetic defense. 83 DSI rating from Cerebro, which is like pretty good, and then floor general 71, like about average. So at least promising defense, decision making, two-way connector, just another good basketball player to put on this roster, and a reliable pick and roll driver, half court creator. And that's the other half of the offense going forward. Is the defense drive and kick off the pace is one thing, but in the half court something's gotta work, and that's where the versatility also comes in, between a couple ISO threats with Paulo and a little bit of Cole, but mostly just pick and roll, drive and kick, solid shot creation, good decision making from smart creators with high feel that are all tall and can look over the defense and make the skip passes from Fultz, Black, Franz, Cole, now not with the length but as the pick and roll, and just a bunch of different ways that Orlando can beat you and sustain good half-court offense no matter who's on the court, as long as they have 1 or 2 ball handlers that can run those type of sets with different shooters and scorers and ways to score around that, with Suggs running off his screen, a little versatility there. Gary Harris, same thing, just being able to score in just about every way where the defense has to pick their poison.
Yeah, well, I really want to say I appreciate the conversation we had, guys. We're at an hour and 30 on the recording. That's what Magic Basketball does to you. Anthony Black, the Jonathan Isaac corner. I really feel like we hit the inner workings of this Magic team. And me, as someone that is not a Magic fan like you guys, even though I do consume their thing as a general NBA fan, hopefully I was able to do a decent job at understanding some parts of your basketball team. But I appreciate you guys so much. I want to give you guys the floor individually to tell the people about your works, because you guys work hard in the content creator space in covering the Magic. I'll start with Steve-O and then we'll get to RK. Steve-O, feel free to do that for the people.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Gifted, thanks for having us. This was a lot of fun. RK, pleasure. Let's do this again. Let's get you on my show later on in the season, man. As things are getting a little bit closer, it'd be fun to connect. Listeners, viewers, you can find me at the Close Up Magic on Twitter or X, or my personal account, which is also full of Magic stuff, but also a bunch of other random tweets these days. Is Steven with a PH 0610. We've been kind of keeping it a little bit cool this off season, taking a little break from the content creation, but once things start ramping up, getting a little bit closer to training camp and media day, we'll be right back at it, doing weekly or bi-weekly episodes the rest of the season. So thanks again, appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate you having me. Great talking hoops. Gifted and Steve, happy to hop on the pod, talk hoops, talk some basketball, especially Magic, anytime. You can follow my work at Substack, YouTube, Twitter, all at the same handle, at Beyond the RK. That's Beyond the Arc, spelled with RK at the end for those listening at home. So I write a newsletter at Substack. I write for Swish Theory and Make Data Viz back in the day for B-Ball Index as well. So you can find most of that on Twitter, and try to just put out good scouting work and trying to evaluate and capture different stories and player development and just impact and fun players to watch and make different film breakdown videos and all that on YouTube, Twitter, Substack. So find my work there. Should have this piece on Aaron Gordon come out eventually. I think I've been saying that on like 2 podcasts now, but we'll see. But I can't wait for that one to come out. But just going over his impact and his journey as a defender and player in this league. So keep on the lookout for that. And thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And again, please shout out to these guys. Their links will be in the description in the comments below. Big shout out to y'all, because I literally just went on Twitter and was like, yo, you guys want to do a podcast to talk about Magic basketball? And now we're literally an hour and 32 in the recording. Hey. So again, I appreciate you guys. My project, I'm really trying to push myself in terms of understanding how every team in the NBA works, and you guys contributed greatly to that vision for myself. So I appreciate that. In terms of me, tap into the Gifted Hoops podcast. This is episode 30. We've done a bunch for almost all the teams. I would say we're almost halfway through the rest of the NBA. So tap into this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also the video version can be found on YouTube at Gifted Hoops. Everything is at Gifted Hoops except for Twitter, because someone has that at. So it's Gifted X Hoops on Twitter. I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys in the next podcast that should be dropping either Monday or Thursday. I record a lot of these podcast episodes in advance, but support these guys and follow these guys. The NBA season is very, very close. It's been a very short off season in my estimation. So can't wait to watch Magic basketball. Tap in with these people. Have a good one. Peace out, people.